That's right.
When the inflation report, the consumer price increase report, inflation report will be coming out. But as of what we know now, inflation is slowing slightly. And the key here is the direction. If inflation were increasing, that would be one thing. But if inflation is starting to slow down, if we're seeing it going in the right direction, then it's not clear that the Fed has got to keep raising interest rates and risking a recession that's going to hurt everybody.
A few minutes later.
They don't want to have another Silicon Valley Bank on their hands next week. And we know that the issue that the bank has been hit with, it's a kind of disease that other banks are also facing to varying degrees. Silicon Valley Bank was a really extreme example of what happens when the Federal Reserve hikes interest rates, and it was compounded by the fact that the bank has this concentration in startups. And so it really needs to, the regulators really need to act fast in order to contain this, to stave off any kind of fears that it will happen to other banks.
Just then.
Our own Deirdre Bosa has some fresh reporting on the Silicon Valley Bank collapse. Deirdre, it just keeps coming. What have you learned? In tech community, it has held deposits for many late-stage companies pre-IPO, and I'm hearing that there are likely more public companies to come out and say that they still have cash there or that they don't, to reassure investors. More questions than answers for now. I've been on the phone all day with founders and investors in tech. They're all wondering what is next. How much money are they going to receive on Monday, and will they be made whole eventually? These questions are most urgent for those cash-burning startups who weren't able to get their money out in time, and they now have bills to pay. I spoke to one founder, Sunny Singh, who just raised his seed round and was about to deposit it in SVB, a newly opened account. He dodged a bullet by waiting, but now he's in a tough position because he faces more uncertainty, which is still percolating through the tech ecosystem.
I spoke with two late-stage security startup CEOs about how geopolitics and the Silicon Valley Bank collapse are creating cyber risk in phishing and ransomware. Here's Cohesity's Sanjay Poonen.
Schools are very vulnerable because then parents are very freaked out that they're getting at their kids, school grades or whatever have you. And if you looked at the recent attack at medical systems or hospital records, in Ireland there was one that was very prominent. The Irish government medical records were hacked by nation-state actors from Russia, and they ended up having to pay the ransom because the recovery of the data they figured would take 6 months.
Arctic Wolf's Nick Schneider says confusion around SVB could open an attack vector.
Anytime there is change, especially change that's happening in mass, across the entire, industry or the entire community, there are opportunities for the attackers to exploit that. And they'll look to exploit it through phishing campaigns that have language that is similar to an email that they might expect to get from the bank or from their CFO or from their board member, or fill in the blank.
One more thing for folks affected by the events of this week to now keep an eye on and be concerned.
10 seconds later.
Extremely scary for those of us who, pay salaries and put food on the table for our employees.
Silicon Valley Bank caters to tech companies, which have been hit hard by rising interest rates. Recently, the bank reported its assets were running low.
That was the flare that went up and said, hey, I got a problem. And that's when the run started in earnest.
The FDIC took over the bank around noon today, but it only insures deposits up to $250,000. The markets tumbled on fears that other banks could be at risk.
There are recent developments that concern a few banks that I'm monitoring very carefully.
The collapse came even as the U.S. logged another strong monthly jobs report, with employment levels surpassing their pre-pandemic high.
Overall, we've created more jobs in 2 years than any administration has created in their first 4 years. And I think all this matters.
This rare bank collapse highlights the challenges that come with high interest rates. But the Federal Reserve is widely expected to hike rates again in a couple of weeks as it works to bring inflation down even further. JB?
This is how legends are born.